Well, I'm really excited this week because we're literally recording an episode with our guest right here on the farm. So if you're watching this via Zoom, you're going to get to see Natasha McCrary on the farm. And so welcome, Natasha, to the Flower Podcast.
Hey, Scott. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I'm a avid listener of yours, so this is such an honor to be your guest today.
Well, thank you. And so the name of your business is 1818 Farms. And I know you grow flowers. So I would love to hear before we get into all of the history behind the name and what you're doing now. Like, have you always been into flowers? And just kind of give us a brief cap. We'll have to edit that, I guess. A brief, synopsis of your journey into flowers.
Yes. So my journey has been I've done worn a lot of hats in my life, and so out of college I was graduated from the University of Alabama with a degree in marketing, which has helped a lot with flower farming. I will tell you guys that marketing is very important. But after college, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I worked for a company called Anderson Consulting, I was a systems engineer there for 2 years. Then I left that, and I realized working 14-hour days in one office was probably not great for a people person. So I went into pharmaceutical sales, and I did that for 5 years. And then I was a stay-at-home mom, and I started a nonprofit to help Title I children feed them meals on the weekend. And I did that for a few years. And then at that point, I have 3 children. They were all going to be where they were in school. And I really wanted to start a business that they could see how you you create a business model, you have a plan, and to implement it, and how you can create a business. So what we were initially going to do is start just a small working farm. We were going to breed the Southdown Babydoll sheep, which we still do today. We were going to grow produce and cut flowers and sell at farmers markets, which most flower farmers, we all start in a farmer's market. And we sold to restaurants also. So we were going to do that. Really, it was a project to teach our children about giving back to the land, sustainability, being stewards of the land. And actually, as you know now, so many children at that age, you want to get them outdoors and it's a tendency to be on tablets, gaming, and it was really just to kind of teach them. So when we started, we were going to breed the sheep, grow the produce, and we were going to be an agritourism destination. And that was going to be to educate school-age children, which has turned into adults and master gardeners and that kind of thing over the years. So it's evolved a lot, but it just started, as a basis of education and a family building project for us.
Wow. Well, that's impressive. So as a child or like in college and stuff, were you interested in flowers at all then? Or has that just been just a byproduct of having the farm or having the property that you have?
Well, I've always loved to garden. Like growing up, my father is a botanist. So we grew all of our food. I mean, even today, that's what they're doing. You don't can 10 quarts of green beans, you can 150 quarts. So, you know what I'm saying? Like we grew everything. Like I can remember shucking the corn. I can remember, shelling the peas, but also I remember my mom we always had like a little patch of zinnias there. And then also my grandmother growing up was an avid rose lover. And so I remember childhood memories of all these heirlooms that I would do anything today to have a cutting of those, sure. Her being published in the newspaper because of her roses. So I always loved flowers. When we really turned in 2017, we went 100% flowers. And what I saw at the farmers market is, let's say I had my stand set up. We did farmers markets 2012, 2007, for several years. You would have someone who will negotiate with you on the beautiful heirloom tomato, but these flowers, never would they ask for a different price. Really? Flower was considered a luxury item. I saw that over the years. Like, here's my price. No one came up and said, well, you give me that for $5. I realized quickly, and a lot of it would be they would come to our flower stand and they would see a certain flower at the market and they would tell me the story of their grandmother grew this, or their mom grew this, and it would bring back nostalgia in their minds. And I saw at that point early on, there's a connection to flowers. And I don't know if you've seen that before. It's a deep connection. I've written in a blog before when we started this as the Seed to Base initiative. they evoke emotions. You
Yes.
think of flowers, you receive them. I mean, that's my favorite gift to receive. But you think of times when let's say you were young and you went to prom, it was young love. Or if it was a time your sweetheart sends you Valentine's flowers, you're having a hard time, your friend sends you a bouquet, or even as a condolence. We send a lot of condolence. So I think it's something about flowers that just constantly evokes an emotion in people who purchase them.
No, I totally agree. And I've seen it. You're right. I mean, even myself. I mean, there's certain flowers that I connect with because of my grandparents or because of my parents. You know, I mean, there's just certain things that I don't know. You can't put words to it, but it definitely strikes a core deep down inside. And you're right. It brings some emotions often to the surface. So you
Yeah, you don't get
recognize
this.
that.
Yes, you don't get the same emotion off of a tomato you get on a Lysianthus. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I never had somebody. I mean, maybe I had someone. They're like the Cherokee Purple, but you know what I'm saying? They just are in awe. I mean, male, female, children. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's generational. The beauty of fresh cut flowers.
Sure. So at that point, okay, so now I've forgotten now because I was so entrenched with that story. So how long have you been growing produce or flowers or something?
Okay, we started in 2012,
Okay.
and we probably at that beginning were 25% flowers, 75% produce.
Okay. So
By
then
2000, yeah, but by 2016, we were about 50-50.
Okay.
We were half. And then I started thinking, okay, I love flowers. I see how my customers love flowers. Let's start the Seed to Vase initiative. We had done farm to table dinners for years. So I said, let's take a spin on farm to table. Let's do Seed to Vase. And when someone purchases a bouquet for me, if we were unable to run our flower truck now, but pre-COVID, I mean, I'll show them, this is how you can dry the flower. This is how you can save the seed. I mean, I give them a lot more education than just passing over the bouquet and walking away. And I talk about, this flower would dry well. This flower, this is when we plant the flower. Like I try and give a lot more information other than here's just your bouquet and let's just kind of walk away. Because I want people to become confident that they can grow, even if it's a small 8x8 plot, you can go to your backyard and you can plant a beautiful little cutting garden. And that's
Right.
kind of what we talk about. We had a workshop last night. We bring a lot of people to our farm, and I try and give them confidence and think out of the box. I just cut all these camellia for greenery today because I thought this would look great in the bouquet. You don't have to just have a garden like I have. You can do a very small seasonal garden and have the beauty of fresh flowers at your home, within just out your door.
Absolutely. And the neat thing about that is that allows you to connect with your customers, and they trust you. You're giving value in what you're doing more and more, which I think is great. I really want to. So where did the name 1818 Farms come from?
Okay, so when we were naming the farm, we live in a small town called Mooresville, Alabama. It's population 58, like 58 people. I tell people I have more chickens at this farm than we have people. I mean, it's incorporated. There's a mayor, a town council. It's the oldest continually operating post office in the Southeast. It's very much like a small, they call it Alabama's Williamsburg. Like most of the homes are early 1800s. And so and so his family has been here since the 1800s, and we moved back 15 years ago. And the town was incorporated in the year 1818. Alabama didn't become a state until the year 1819. So
really?
We were trying to come up, yes, with a name that had historical significance, not just to us, but to the town, because it's a nod. I mean, 200, and we just had our 201 year birthday. So that we felt was, in naming it, we tossed a lot of names around, flower names and, different things, but we felt that was just really a nod back to this community that for this many years, this small little town has been here and continues to stand. So the name 1818 it's been perfect for us. Now I laugh. I tell people, once a guy called me and said, I cannot find your farm on GPS is not going to get me there. And I said, well, are you sure? Let's go through it again. He goes, 1812 Farms. And I said, that is the wrong year. That was the war. I said, we got to get you back into 1818. But anyway, so the name is great. I think it's memorable, and it means a lot, you know, for our family to have been here this many years.
Wow. So your family of 5 is almost 10% of the population of the city.
Yes, because we have 5 more family members who live here. So actually,
Oh.
we're more because there's 10 of us total. So yeah, so there's 10 of us. But it's really great. I encourage your followers to go to mooresvilleal.com and just see that it's a lot of historic buildings where Garfield preached in the Civil War. There's Andrew Johnson was an apprentice here. I mean, it's tiny. I mean, it's just a few blocks. I mean, you could just, I mean, I walk here every day. My house is just like around the corner. But it is interesting, is historically, it's just off the beaten path, and you just kind of stumble upon it. And it's a beautiful, you know, it's a beautiful community. It's more like a village, is what I would call it, than a city.
Right. Well, that's pretty exciting. Let me ask this. So I know that in conversations that we've had, and you may have hinted to it earlier, but you know, one of the focuses for your property has been agritourism. And
Yes.
so I'd really kind of like to unpack what your business model is and kind of everything you're involved in. I know that you mentioned the sheep, which I'd love for you to kind of, I like to learn a little bit more about that. And then also the flowers you grow, and you bring people there, and normally you, I guess, how do you distribute your flowers? You know, who are your customers? Kind of, you know, that, if you could unpack that for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, perfect. So there's many facets to our farm. You know, in our business model, you know, the farm is the center of everything we do. So we're a Babydoll sheep breeder. For y'all who, and hopefully you'll have some photos we can send in. This breed of sheep looks like a smiling teddy bear. I mean, it looks just the cutest thing you've ever seen. And when they're fully wooled, the breed of sheep was almost extinct in the 1990s. And so a big mission of our farm is to preserve this historic breed. So we're very selective. I mean, you would think, I mean, I have like an interview process for anyone who gets one of our lambs, but it's to preserve this heritage breed. So that's a piece of what we do. We have hens, and we sell the eggs. Then we have the flowers. Our customer has evolved over the years. Last year, we sold a little bit heavier on the wholesale side, and we have a flower truck. The way we ran the flower truck, we did rent for some private events, but we have a line of handcrafted bath products. And this line, we're considered, you can purchase directly from us, but we have a wholesale presence. So we have shops, just like your mom and pop shops, who carry this. So what we did with the flower truck is we went within a 45-mile radius once a week to these stores, and that was kind of like a add-on for them, as the flower truck is there. You know, you're able to come purchase, so it was purchasing directly from us. And then we did home delivery. So what we've seen this year, which has really changed for us, is we were talking about, when I knew I was talking with you, could we put a number on how COVID has changed our business? And really we can't, because this is a baseline year for us, even though we've been selling flowers for 8 years, because our business has grown so much. It's one of the positives out of it, I think, is we've switched totally to contactless porch delivery. And you can still, you know, I have purchased buckets of flowers. We have wedding designers who will come and walk through the fields. We have brides who will come walk through the fields, but we are doing home delivery. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable leaving their homes. There's a lot of people who know their parents are at home and they are unable to leave. They gift them. But I think what I've found with flower farming, and you can see this too, it's really grown, I think, in the last 10 years, yes. 10, 12 years. I don't think a lot of people have seen the true cut flower you can get from the field and how many varieties. You know, even a wholesale house, they're limited in what they can get in because they may not ship well. You know, they probably aren't going to be selling zinnias at their shop because they don't ship well, or maybe the celosia, like we grow a lot of celosia. So I think what people have found that they like in this home delivery is they're seeing the unusual. They know, we call it the bouquet of the day. We're going to send whatever's the freshest, most beautiful at that moment in our field. And I think it sparked a lot of interest, because you wouldn't believe the number of people who, after they receive the bouquet, they email me, I've never seen this flower before. Could you tell me about what this is? And I think that just getting the flowers into people's hands is sort of a trickle effect. My business motto in anything that we do is you get one first impression. Not that you're ever going to send something that's not the best you have, but make every product, whether it's a product we make in the bath line, whether it's the experience of the bloom stroll, whether it's a field trip for kindergartners, you get one first impression, and that impression can last, and it pays it forward in that if someone receives this bouquet and it's the most beautiful bouquet they said they've ever seen, they're going to tell a friend about it. And so I think that's one of the reasons too, in a positive in what we've been with in a pandemic, is we have been able to get our flowers into more people, individuals' hands.
Right, that direct to consumer approach. I mean, it's always crazy because if you are selling to a wedding professional or you're selling to a shop, you're removed from that end customer. They don't get that contact, that oh my gosh, I've got this directly from this person, you know,
right.
in northern Alabama, that, you know, they're in my backyard, and how cool is it that I just got these flowers?
Right. And one thing I encourage, this is the marketing brain, like my brain never stops. Like, okay, my family's probably like, could she just go to sleep? I always am thinking about what's going to make the best impression. I'm customer centric. All I'm thinking about is what is going to be important to our customer, no matter what we do. Like with a bouquet, and I brought to kind of show you, I pay a little extra because I want a beautiful card, and we handwrite every note. I try to use my best penmanship. It is not the best. My dream, other than high-speed internet in the country and beautiful penmanship, those are my two dreams. But like, I spend more money on this, but I think it makes an impression. And this is just for someone out who's a flower farmer. I know when you're starting and you're thinking, I've worked in the field all day, I'm exhausted, can I do one more thing? Like, I took this picture. It's out in the field with me with all the cosmos. And I have a beautiful, note, flowers fresh from our farm to you. Because someone may get that bouquet and not realize, hey, these are from a local farm, and they may look us up. I know it costs a little bit more, but I think it makes an impression. It makes that recipient feel I'm special. When I have people who've purchased 7 or 8 bouquets, I take the time and I write a handwritten note. I have enjoyed, like last week, the ladies ordered 8 bouquets. I've enjoyed, you being our customer. She had never purchased one thing from us in all these years. I know that you love purple and pinks now. I feel like I have had a connection with you. And I think that's important in any business, is get to know your customer and let them know you appreciate them. I think it's a little thing. And I know if you're starting, and like I said, and you feel like it is an investment that I purchased these cards, but I think that lets the customer know, hey, they care that I received this, or that I that I gifted this. If they hear I got this beautiful bouquet and this card, it might be a little something you're doing, but in the long term, I think you may see a reward from it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so beautiful. I mean, that card with all that cosmos. I mean, first of all, they may not even be receiving cosmos in that bouquet that day. And so it's like, it's a way for them to see something else that you carry if it isn't in there.
Right.
And then also that's something they'll probably save. I mean,
yes.
You would probably put that, I mean, not everyone does it, but put that up on the refrigerator or put that on the desk and look at it and remember, and you're going to be more thoughtful, because it's such a nice card that it doesn't look like something you just naturally just throw away. And so what a great way to connect. I love that idea. I really do. So do you sell your flowers? You mentioned the flower truck, and I know with COVID, that's obviously been impacted, but do you do markets? Do you do CSAs? What are the different ways that you actually put your product out there?
So you can order, we call it blooms by the bucket, and that's kind of a bulk method. We do sell to wholesalers, like they'll call us. It just seems they're slower right now. They just don't, weddings are being, I think you and I discussed this earlier, weddings are being cut back, they're being postponed. That was a pretty big chunk for us last year. We knew we were going to sell X amount of dollars a month, pretty steady, but that's just not there this year as much. I mean, I feel badly for the wholesalers. I think they're struggling, quite a bit with events being cut down. And then we do the home delivery, and then we do, we just call it a bouquet subscription. And versus, it's really a CSA, but we do a 6-month. I mean, you could change it and do it weeks or whatever, but a lot of ours, that way I feel like when I do a 6-month subscription, I'm able to hit them starting in March and go, flowers change so much. What I had in March versus what I have today. And that gets back to, oh my goodness, the flowers are so different. Someone messaged me yesterday who got their bouquet. They're like, I can't believe I'm on bouquet 5. There's never a repeat. Or if there's a repeat, maybe it's a zinnia that was, I'm in a queen series now versus what I might have been last month. Like we try and make them very different. But of course we're going to put lisianthus. As long as we can have a lisianthus, it's going in the bouquet. But, and like this year, I mean, for us, just blessed the number of subscriptions we have. And we hope, that's another thing. Some of our subscriptions fell off this week. This week we delivered, and I wrote a handwritten note of how much I have enjoyed providing these flowers. And I thanked them if they didn't purchase it for whoever purchased it for them. And I hope they loved every bouquet. But I think it's the personal touch. And I've already had people say, I've already told them I want this for Christmas next year. This is the best gift that we've ever received, because I think at some point in your life, people don't always want things. A flower to me is also kind of an experience. It's the whole thing. Like I said, you ring the doorbell, they send you the text. It's the experience of what you feel when you open the door to that bouquet. So those are going to be our main outlets. We're trying this year to really extend our season into dried florals. That we knew going last year we started, and it was pretty successful in the little that we harvested. I knew to get the quality that I wanted, this has to be every day on our agenda. There's harvesting just for dry. Like I think some people have the tendency to, okay, I've had the bouquet for 4 days, now I'm going to go dry it. For the best quality, we need to cut it in the field and it goes straight to the drying room.
I agree.
So that's a every day. Okay, at the end of the day, but we need to each cut 300. We do 30 stems of gomphrena. Some things are 10 stems. Some things are mixed bouquets. But we know how many hundreds of stems I want cut every day to get into the drying room, because we want to be able to launch these September, October, and go through into February with these. And then that way you're constantly touching people. I think there's a huge market with dried. Well, first of all, I think people think of the 80s. I remember the dried whatever my mom had, and it was dusty and it had been there for I don't know how long it had been there. And I think people got that thought. I think a lot of the reason that dried probably went away, besides that, the 80s, was a lot of the flower farming left the United States. So, one thing we're doing today is I just received my own package of dried flowers because I'm testing the best way to package them. Because I want the customer to have the experience with the less breakage, how I want the color. Did anything shift in the box? How does it look? So there's a little bit of testing on that side. But for us, we also take the flowers and we do, which is the Williamsburg style wreath, the Delarobia with the fruit and the dried flowers. Like we've done that for years. And we knew how much people liked it. And then we were like, okay, we may offer swags, magnolia swags. We like to be able to offer the hands-on classes. Like a lot of people come here and we make the wreath. Mm-hmm. But I do think the dried bundles, there's quite a market out there because it's keeping beauty when you can't locally find fresh flowers in December. I mean, you just can't. And so I think it's a great little gifting option for people. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I mean, I may talk to you next February and go, remember when I said about those dry flowers? That was not a good idea. I can have a bonfire out here at the farm. But I think, and I saved a few for you to show, and hopefully if you don't mind if I show you kind of how the colors are pulling when you cut. Like this gomphrena was pretty kind of how vibrant that is.
Yeah.
And, there's some here that we're doing, like these were more things, Nigella, we're cutting and bundling too. But the key, I think, the key is going to be, you got to cut it at the right time. You don't cut it when it's going to seed. And that may be some larkspur we had.
That's beautiful.
Which is really cute. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's just another. And there are people out there who say, I don't want to buy flowers. It makes me sad because they die in 7 days. So look, I have something for that customer now who is a little bit doesn't like to spend on fresh flowers. So we now can touch that customer. And, I've even considered the last subscription, or I may even go back and give them the everlasting and our last subscription for those who fall in October, because that will give them something to look at until hopefully we are able to give them a subscription in February.
Sure. Yeah, and then they're mindful of it. Well, the thing I love about what you've said, and I think that sometimes people miss, is, I mean, I used to buy the dried flowers where I worked, and so I bought literally items from all over the world. Most of the product though that we sold was domestic. I would say that the best product that we got is the product that was cut for drying purposes, not something that's a leftover flower, not something that had already passed its peak and maybe it didn't sell and it was in the cooler and they took it out and dried it, because then it's
Mm-hmm.
faded. Then it's, it might have mold in it or might have
Oh,
some kind of moisture in the flower that prevents it from really drying well. Where if you go right from field to drying, you don't get that condensation that the cooler can bring and things. And so I really think that's important, and I'm glad to hear that. One thing I wanted to, and this is going to be my last question on this. I feel like I don't want to, I've probably been here too long already, but the subscriptions, is it a weekly, a monthly? Do they do it for like 2 or 3 months? I mean, how
yeah.
does that, what's the
Well,
basics
it
of
can
that?
be tailored either way, but we usually say monthly. And
Okay.
but let's say someone came in, like we had someone who came in, usually we'll pull them off the website at a certain time because there's so much going on here at the farm. Sometimes it's hard for us to hit. We know how many bouquets we could probably, it's the delivery part that's the hard, because we don't do you pick up somewhere. We're taking them straight. We're doing within a 45-minute radius. So it's not like we're in downtown Birmingham and everybody is there in 15 minutes. We
Right.
made, like my son delivered in Decatur and then he delivered in Huntsville. That's a 40-minute drive today from, bouquets that were going out. So if, like, for someone who came in later, what we're doing is I pretty much said, okay, typically our frost hits the end of November, the 1st of November. Last year in the drought, everything was ripped out of our field by September 20th because it didn't matter how much we irrigated. It just, the flowers didn't look good. And so we pulled it out, tilled, got the cover crop in, and then waited and got all the cool flowers in. So if someone, and I have some people who'll just email us and say, I want a bouquet every week. And so really they didn't fall under the bouquet subscription of 6 months, but they create their own. And we have a lot of people who will do that. Like I think someone gifted for a wedding gift last week. They sent a beautiful, like we do like little curated boxes from our bath products, and they sent a 4-week subscription. So we allow people to just kind of, create what they want. But then the big subscriptions, we give them like a cute 1818 Farm t-shirt with the flower truck on it, and then they have their first bouquet subscription. Or if it's a holiday, that way we'll make a cute card and include the shirt, and they can gift it at holiday.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
but now I have to think of what to do, because if people repurchase, they may not want that flower truck t-shirt. So I have to come up with, maybe they'll get a dry bundle. So they'll start with a dry bundle in December. I'm not
There
sure.
you go. There you
But
go.
I think for anyone, and what I love about the subscriptions is, as you know, when you were a grower, the most important thing of being a flower farmer is you have to be a planner. Because if you are not planning 6 months ahead, you're not going to get what you need. Like I talked about this at the bloom stroll last night. This lady said, I don't understand how I can never get the colors that I want when I order my bulbs. I said, because I ordered those in May. You order so much further ahead. You have to be planning, so much ahead. So that's another important thing with the flower farming. And that gets into the subscriptions. You've got to manage the subscriptions. How many can we handle? Given we can hire more people, but we have to make sure, are we selling enough subscriptions to justify hiring that additional person?
Right. Well, and that's a great point. I know we just got done interviewing or releasing an episode with Yost from Florabundance. And one of the things that he does is help source bulbs and dahlia tubers and things like that. Well, dahlias are really now entering their, the beginnings of their peak season. And they're already getting the process lined up to be placing orders for next year. So, here we're just right at the cusp of the season beginning, or really getting going strong. But I mean, that's almost a year ahead of time, what you would expect. And so in order to get the really cool varieties, and you may pay more
Yes,
for it, but you're
still,
going to get what you want when you're ready for it. So that's awesome. I really love that. One thing you mentioned earlier, and I was kind of really wondering, and I know that with your background in marketing, I kind of love to hear more about that too. But this Seed to Vase initiative, is that just more of an education type situation, or was that a more product oriented situation?
I think it was more, well, it sort of changed a little bit now that you asked that. So it started out education. When I hosted we do on-site workshops, and we've changed those this year too. Before it was more, I had 40 buckets of flowers, and we talked about the elements of the bouquet, just a simple bouquet, and you went and selected everything. Now it's, everyone has a bucket. They may not match, but you have, like last night we had 19 varieties. You had 70 something stems. everything is like that. When I first hosted that workshop, I saw, and it goes back to flowers evoking emotions, the joy of those ladies in 2017. It was just a fluke. I said, you know what? We've had flowers. I want to host a workshop. I want people love when we did the farm to table dinners to look at the gardens, to learn about what we grew. I just did this on a fluke. And that's really what flipped the light switch for me, was how much they loved it and how hungry they were for the knowledge. They were hungry to learn, how did you grow this? Was this from seed? Why was this a plug? How deep did you plant this? So that really is what started the Seed to Vase initiative. Now we were, this last year, I've always had a windbreak in our garden, the purple hyacinth bean. You know, it's an heirloom, beautiful. I've had it years ago. A friend of a friend of a friend gave them the seeds, and I had it for years, and I would save the seed. Well, 2 years ago, I forgot to save the seed. I thought, oh, it'll be fine. It overwintered, nothing germinated. So I went to buy the seed. It was like $50 for what I needed. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So in my mind, I thought I should start. I wanted to talk to our extension agent. You know, there aren't a lot of, there's really no one out there where you can learn how to sell seeds. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. I mean, we grew up saving seeds in our garden, my grandparents, but, you know, I know there's different grading of it. And I mean, there's just, even the extension agent, no one knows what to tell you. But I started, let's start simple. So I got our seed certification, and I thought, what fits better in our seed to vase if we can say, you know, sell the seed. So last year, our first seed was the purple hyacinth. And when you knew, a light goes off when online people from all over are buying the seed. Like, you know, you expect maybe locally they come to the farm, but when you're shipping all over, I mean, you know, okay, there is a need for this type of heirloom. So we've selected a few seeds that we feel are our best performers. Like, I love the bachelor buttons. It's an easy seed to save. I have the colors I like the best, so this fall we'll offer that. There's a different Cosmo that I like for pollinator, and you can use for dyeing, like dyeing cloth. So that's one. So we're starting small in that. It's just that kind of fits into seed to vase. So I see over time the seed to vase growing, but this is kind of where it started, was just the education part. I'm a huge part that you should be a lifelong learner. I mean, lifelong learning, I learn something every day here. Sometimes it's not, you know, I try to tell people, I don't like to say failures, I like to say learning experiences. That's what I tell them here at the farm. Because that was not a failure, that was a learning experience. That quinoa that quinoa that looks so beautiful in Colorado, it does not do well in Alabama. It is a magnet for every pest in our garden. You know, let's rip that out. But I like to be a learner, a teacher, and I think what better way with the Seed to Vase initiative than for us to bring people on site, provide seeds, educate them with the bouquets. I think the drying element is going to be an education too. I'd love to be able to include a little card of, this is your dry bouquet, here's what's in here. You know, and some seeds may fall out. I'm sure the Nigella pod, a seed will probably fall out, and I want to make sure they know, go put it in your garden this year. But I think that is an important part of, and I, you know, you'd heard farm to fork, farm to table, but I'd never heard really seed to vase. And I think it's just, people love flowers. Let's find a way to educate them, provide the seeds, and make them have a beautiful garden at home.
I love that. The idea of seed in itself, just seed, is one of those things that I just intrinsically just am always amazed by, because this little, especially Nigella, this little piece of dust practically, you know, it's like, what amazing things that little piece of dust does when you know, plant it and nurture it and then grow it out, and you end up with hundreds of blooms, and it's like such an amazing little plant. And I don't know, seed continually amaze me, and I think that's an awesome way to just kind of I don't know, reach more people and spread more, you know, beauty. So,
and I think a lot of it is taking the time to share your knowledge. Like last night we had the workshop here, the bouquet workshop, and we had these beautiful it was a celosia, cheap celosia. It was a really beautiful pink. And she was like, what is this falling out of here? And I was like, you know, we cut it before it goes to seed, but you're still at the base going to have some. I was like, Lawrence, my husband's here, could you go get her a paper bag? So then I stopped. I was like, okay, we're stopping right here in the workshop. Take a paper bag. If you see this at home, and then I went through, here's how you plant them. I went through, here's how when we plant them, we get a toothpick and we wet it and we put it in the top of the soil, because if you cover it, it's not going to germinate. Or if we plant in the field, we just take our finger and we press it down and we water it for 3 days and you have a sprout. At that moment, I know we were doing something totally different, but I think an educator and someone who loves flowers and wants to share your knowledge, don't be scared to stop and share what you know to just really brighten someone's life. It was a piece of knowledge I take for granted because I've planted how many thousands of those. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
No one, who would think about not covering it, you know, but everyone thinks you need to cover a seed for it to germinate. So I think not being afraid and being willing to share your knowledge. I think sometimes you get so busy in flower farming. I think you could be like, I've just got this to do, this to do, this to do, this to do. Do I have time to stop and share the knowledge? But I think in the end, that's what people appreciate. I'm great with them going to grow their own flowers because I want them to have that beauty and share a little piece of our farm with them.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And then it just keeps moving on and on and on and on. And the story grows. The story continues to grow because then that person, you know, plants a seed and grows a flower and they remember back to you. And then, you know, and then that's something that, you know, ends up being passed on to the next person. I think with everything that's happened this year, I know you've hinted at it a little bit with having to shift, you know, that selling to wholesalers was a big part of what you did. You've had to pivot, which is the word of the year, and change your business model a little bit. How has that really impacted you as far as how you've changed? I know you've hinted on generalities of it, but specifically, so where is your business percentage wise now going?
Okay, so now home delivery definitely top and forefront, but I found for me it has caused me to slow down. I mean, I'm sad this has all happened, but for once I have time to think about future projects, to dry more flowers, that we're not just huffing and puffing because we got to get the flower truck loaded for the next venue. So in some ways it has been a breath of fresh air. I think it slowed people down a little bit, but it for us, we've had, you know, continual growth. And then you kind of worried. A big piece of our business is the bath line. So we have around 500 stores in the United States who carry our bath line. And, you know, when COVID hit, it went from wholesale orders to boom to zero. I mean, it went to zero. Like there were none because the stores had to close. But at that point, what happened is people started buying directly on our website. So that's another thing I encourage flower farmers, anyone in the flower world, even if you start basic now, build a website. Because if we had not had a web presence, I don't know how that would have affected us, because a lot of our employees are in our manufacturing facility that, you know, has the brand 1818 Farms and the cute little sheep, and it may have the lavender goat's milk and all this. But I find even with our stores that where our accounts, a lot of them didn't have websites and their sales were down 80%. So I encourage you, even it's just so simple, get yourself, you know, build a website, start getting your name out there, because you don't want something like this to happen. Like if there are no farmers markets, you know, if you don't have, you need a website to be able to sell a CSA, you know, to contactless. So I encourage you, one of my biggest pieces of advice is to get your website. I'm sure if you don't know how to do it, I bet you there's a teenager somewhere who knows how and would love to help and probably get high school credit for it. But start now because you want that presence. So I think that's the biggest thing. We were blessed in the fact that we survived because we had the website there. And then the flowers, we felt like just brightened everyone's lives. We were busier than we've ever been at this point. But I think if we had never had a marketing presence, if we've never had brand awareness, I'm not so sure that's where we would be. And I think that anybody could see that who struggled a lot is you have to have brand awareness. Yeah. Do what it takes to do brand awareness.
Well, I know, and sometimes people say, you know, I'm so busy weeding, I'm so busy planting for the next succession, I'm so busy making deliveries, you know, when do I have time to do that? And I kind of feel like that if you can carve out that time, it will reap huge benefits for situations like this. Your background being marketing, what do you think are really, I mean, you just mentioned the website, which is, I agree. Is that the main thing that people should focus on from a marketing standpoint, or do you think of other avenues as well?
Okay, I think of multiple. You've got to have your website for the transaction. You know, we use Shopify as our as the background, and you can build a website through Shopify. We've used Shopify for years. but also social media is extremely important. I can't tell you the number of times that I have posted in a story that bouquets are available, and they swipe and they go to Shopify and they order the bouquet. I mean, it's a huge presence. And I have store owners who we've worked with for years, and they're not huge on social media. I'm like, you have to have a presence on social media, and post relevant things that people love. And if you'll notice, I mean, sometimes I'm not very good at posting. I do most of the posting, and it could be a few days that it goes by, but none of our posts are planned. It happens when it happens. And I think what people want, and this is what I think connects people to our brand, is be real, be yourself, be real time, and connect with your customer. I mean, people have seen me in the barn in the coveralls delivering a lamb. I mean, and that's how I usually look. I mean, that's what I told Scott when we started this. I said, that means I have to comb my hair. If we're doing Zoom, I've got to do something here, because you do not want to see me how I usually look. But the power of social media, positive social media, there is no metric that you can put on that. I mean, there's just not a metric. I mean, print media is gone. I mean, print media it's there, but is it as relative as the real time? Because especially when you're dealing now with millennials, they want real time. They want immediate, it's immediate. And what I post today, they might not even remember tomorrow, but if it's something that they love, they're going to save it. They're going to look back on it. So I can't, and come up with some cute hashtag your farm. Like everything we do, we hashtag 1818 farms. Start, because then someone may say, what else do? They may not follow you, but they may see someone shared it. They are going to hit your hashtag. So, invest a little time, even if you carve out, it's with your coffee and it's in the morning at 6 a.m. and you got a picture the day before. Have your cell phone. I always have my cell phone, unless it's 105 and my phone will shut down, in my pocket, because most of the pictures we take are real time. It's something that at the moment it's not planned. It just happens. And I think that's what people want to see. And for you who are flower farmers, or a farmer in general, that's what I find, especially we're in lambing season. A lot of people can't have a farm. They can't, they live in the city. They can't have a farm. They want to live the life that what we're doing, and see when the flowers are sprouting, and see when you do make the cut, see when the lamb you're wiping the lamb down because it's just birth. Like, they want to live vicariously through you. And I think the flower farming, there's a lot of power in that. I think florists, I think anyone in the floral industry, people want to live vicariously through you, and maybe they can't have that life, but they want to be a part of that. And I think just be inclusive with that.
Well, I think they want to connect, and there's not that many options, especially now with quarantining and COVID and, all of that, but it's a great way to connect. You touched on hashtags, and I'm wondering, if people don't know your farm, how do you go about using those to really kind of get out into circulation? Because, I know if somebody shares it, it's a good way to come back to you, especially if you're using your business name. But are there any other, like, maybe tidbits or pointers you have for creating other hashtags?
Well, a lot of times we have a pretty standard hashtag that I have over in notes that I'm going to use every time. But I may add in, like, if it's zinnias that day, or if it was gomphrena, it may change into the hashtag. We have some standard, like flower farm, flower truck, bath and body. There's some standard, but especially if you're in floral design, flower farmer is a big one, farmer florist. Like, in every post, we're going to have that, because a lot of people, for me, I don't really follow a ton of people, but I follow a lot of hashtags, because you feel like I know a lot of people. But I'm always at the farm working. So I have my people I follow, but I do follow a lot of hashtags. So that's going to pull up in my feed, and that's how I end up following other people, is because it shows up, especially on Instagram. It'll pull, if it's a flower farming picture that's gotten a lot of likes, I'll see it. Or if it's something, another dried flowers, like I follow a lot of dried flowers. So hashtag your pictures that fit your brand. And I think that's going to pull a lot of people in. That's how you kind of get other than people finding out about you, the new followers, is through the hashtags. Like, I think a lot of times it's hard to understand, how does that little hashtag get me new followers? But a lot of it is, you want people who have that same interest. And that's what I tell people all the time. They're like, aren't you worried you don't have X followers? And I'm like, I'd rather have lower followers, but the ones who are organic, which is we haven't paid for, an organic, and they believe in our beliefs, they believe in what we do, because that's the kind of person you want to connect with. And I think if you do hashtags that fit your business, you're going to find the type of follower who's a long-term follower who you can, I mean, I feel like some of the people who follow us, I feel like I could go to their house and sit on their sofa because for years, you know, they comment. I mean, I'm not kidding. I feel like there's people all over the world. I could go, there's a girl in Spain that in the early days followed us, and I feel like I could just call her, you know, message her tomorrow and go to her house. We've never even met, but we have commented on each other's pictures for years. But we are like-minded. You know, she has sheep. She loves to grow flowers. She's, you know, very into nature. So I think it's a way, it's more important, I think, like I was saying, a lot of people get hung up on the followers. It's important about having organic followers who believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like sometimes the whole hashtag thing gets downplayed or you end up feeling like you're part of this bigger ocean, but it's just another way to connect. And I know we use a lot of them. I feel like it's been a good way for us to reach people that maybe don't know about us, and I believe in the power of the hashtag, and I think that is something that sometimes gets underutilized. One other thing that you mentioned earlier that I'd like to unpack, because I know that a lot of times when farmers, you know, live especially farther up north, you know, we're looking for ways to extend season. We're looking for ways, you know, to put the land to use or the land to work 12 months a year because you've got to pay for it 12 months a year. And, you know, you're looking for revenue or you're looking for marketability. And so I know you mentioned that that's one of the things you're working towards. And I'm kind of, you know, do you mind sharing some of the things you're doing? I know you mentioned dried flowers, which maybe that's something we get into more, but I know maybe what else is it that you're doing?
Okay, so I think I'd like to challenge all the flower farmers out there to this, is really go outside, find something you love to do and bring people on at your farm. I know it can be, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, there's too many weeds here, or there's, you know, it's not perfect. I mean,
right.
People are not going to see that. If they have like a little 4x4 garden, they're just going to see the beauty. That's a great way. And find something you're really great at doing. Like I feel like I wouldn't say I'm great, but I can make a simple bouquet and teach people how to do it at home. That's a way, but also host a wreath making workshop. You know, think outside the box with bringing the garden clubs. Like, you know, years ago, what we did, and now we start harvesting so much earlier, but we brought in primarily kindergarten through second graders. Now we're so broad, we go to retirees who are like in the continual learning, bring them to your farm. Because also what happens there, we have a small tour fee, but a lot of it's word of mouth to get word about your farm. We also host photo shoots here, and it's by appointment only. You have an hour private use of the farm, and we recommend evening. It's a lot of it senior shoots, bridal shoots, maternity shoots like that. You just have to really constantly be thinking outside the box of how can I bring another revenue stream in. I think the wreath making is great. You know, we're going to have to rethink this. Usually we did 12 people, let me back up. The Bloom Stroll Bouquet workshops, we did 20 before. Now we got knocked down to 14 to 15 because I had to have it it's all outdoor, but to get the spacing that I wanted. Right. Wreath is going to be a little more complicated. It's a lot more hands-on, so we may have to cut down to 6 to 8, but it just takes, you know how many materials you have. But think outside of your box of how can I get people to my farm to have experiences. They're going to remember a positive experience, and I think that will later translate into a bouquet subscription. Just a home delivery. I think you want to share what you have, and don't ever feel bad about, the weeds. It's a way of life. You know, last night when we had the workshop, I was like, I have to run home and at least get a shower. I was running late. They're going to die how I look right now. So I'm running home to get ready. But I think they want to see real too. But think outside of your box of how can I extend the season, and you have to constantly, you can't think I'm going to plant in April and I'm done in October. You just can't do that. And luckily for us in our zone, there's really for us 0 months down. So like right now, let's say, okay, let's just this way. We're going to plant in October. We're going to pull everything out by October, November. We're going to cover crop part of it. We also save all of the sheep, chicken manure. So we compost, then cover crop. Then we're going to plant October. We're going to plant again in November. We'll be doing dried wreaths, hopefully selling dried bunches, doing wreath classes. January, there's not a lot going on unless you're some seeds you need to work on. You know, we do a lot of wreaths then, but then we start pulling our first double tulips the end of January. So double tulips end of January, and then we get those into cooler to get them for Valentine's Day. Then we hit Valentine's Day. Then by the end of February, anemones. Mid-February, we're cutting anemones, then ranunculus, then all your cool weather. We're cutting that through May. Well, then you've budded up to you're putting all your warm weather and putting all that irrigation down. So really, if you have a good plan, you're not going to have in our zone. I mean, we're not like Calgary. I mean, it's different there. But if you're in a 7A like we are, you can, I mean, there's never, I mean, there's maybe 2 weeks, but there's like, because you're still, even if you think about it, in January, we grow under several low tunnels. So you're still having to, if you have to put the plastic down, lift the greenhouse plastic, you know, you're still doing something. So there's really no downtime. And if you can get into this market of workshops, and I've seen a lot of people who will do the pumpkins. I've never done it. And you carve the pumpkins out and do an arrangement in fall. You just have to think outside the box and not be scared to offer an experience. Because I know most of you who are out there, I mean, flower farming, I tell people all the time, it is a total art. The way I color block the field, whether it's design work, whether it's the way that I'm going to package a bundle to the wholesaler. Like I even go probably over the top, but I want it to look special, the way that I even go to a wholesaler. So it is an art. You're an artist. Don't be scared to share that and teach someone else what you do. I mean, you're going to reap so many benefits, especially if you can get yourself. There's some people I know are uncomfortable with with having people at your farm, but I promise you, and now if you can, especially being outdoors, we do our tables, we do 8-foot tables, we Clorox them, put 2 people on, you know, each end. You've got the space at the farm, have people out. You don't have to have a lot of people, but I mean, and that goes back to the social media. People come, they have a great time. You know, I had someone come 2 hours away last night and they've already posted the pictures and they want to come do a class. I mean, you know, a group of ladies want to come do a class.
2 hours
so it's
away.
A lot of that, 2 hours away for the class last night. Yeah. So, you know, and that goes back to, there aren't a lot of, where I live, and maybe different people, there aren't a lot of flower farms that do this. So you are sitting on an asset. So don't be afraid to come out and be proud and be your own cheerleader and tell people what you do. And it's going to resonate with them, and you're going to show how much you love flowers and you love what you do. And I think you're just going to be thrilled with the results.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we're so busy being our own worst critic and beating up on ourselves for, you know, falling behind or letting something get ahead. And sometimes it's nothing more than the weather. I mean, you can have like a patch of rain, you can't get out in the field, you can't do certain things, or at the same time, you know, you're busy filling all these orders, and so you miss a few things. And I think people just want, you know, appreciate the realness of just connecting that way. And like you've said already 3 times, and it's really important. So that's really, really valuable. So you don't have any high tunnels on the property. Everything is...
No, everything's low tunnel. So I tell people that we usually at peak in our field, if we had now we have a lot of we were talking today, one of the girls who works with me, like, we have got to get our tiller running. We are going to just till away this year. We want some different perennials here. But just in the cutting field, we grow 32 72-foot rows. And we go on a 9-12, mostly 9 and 12 inch spacing. We have a few 18 inch, like for eucalyptus, we do 18. And then we have some perennial beds. So at peak, if I had a flower blooming in every section, you're at like 11,800 plants at once. So I had a lot of people say, wouldn't you like more land? And I'm like, I do not. This is all that I can do right here. Are you kidding me? I could cut all day. And but that's another thing I encourage people. You don't have to have 3 acres. Like, we have 3 acres, but a lot of that's our farm animals, and it's the space where we do education and do the farm tours. But you can have a small space, and but also you think about those 11,000. That's not counting. We've already ripped those out a few times. Right, we've succession planted, and then we had the whole, we were broken in 4 zones, 1, 2, 3, 4. Last year, all of zone 4 was in cool weather, and it was just tunnels. So, you know, this year we loved cool weather. Last year was the year we really expanded in cool weather. We loved it so much. I want to do 1 and 2, because I think that's another thing with your farm. If you can do the cool weather, like in our zone, people are hungry for flowers then, because you're in winter. Right. I mean, your yard's brown, there's nothing there. And people see these flowers, you know, like I loved, of course, the larkspur, but the rocket snapdragons for us. I mean, I've never been a huge snapdragon person, but these rocket snapdragons, were like, I should write a novel about them. They were so beautiful. I mean, I did the white. They were so beautiful. Like I had some designers who use them. They were like, these are the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I'm like, I don't know how I did it, but let's hope it repeats next year. But there's so many things. I think what it is, okay, if you don't plant cool weather and you live in our zone, so many people have tried to plant a larkspur, a delphinium. They've tried to plant the snaps, and they cannot live here. And once it gets to May, it's not going to work. So if you don't plant in October, and that's the thing in this zone, is people say, how did you do that? I mean, how are these here? I've tried for years and they never make it. So that's another reason, if you can really hit heavily on cool flowers, I think we could probably outsell, if we could have a killer cool flower and hit Mother's Day, Easter, we could probably outpace in those few months that we do the whole year in the field, in summer. I think there's no way, because Mother's Day, we could have sold any flower we had.
Right, exactly. No, that's a good point. And it definitely, I know in some places they can't do that, but definitely in the lower 48, I think there's a lot of opportunity there if you're up for it. And definitely, you know, some people, I know I've talked to some farmers that, you know, say they look forward to having the downtime and then of course I know some farmers that have switched where their downtime is now July, because typically a lot of places are slower than the demand is slower, and it's so blazing hot, it's difficult for some flowers, and so they kind of wind down, and then they have a planned bubble that they, you know, let kind of sit there, and then after, you know, August, the next wave starts to pick up and carries them through. And so I know, and it's just what works for you, but I think the idea of you know, extending a season, and I love the idea of the workshops and being able to bring people to the farm, and because it's just that diversity of income. You know, we've talked about that on many episodes, and I think it's super, super important. What do you think has been one of the biggest challenges in establishing your business to the level it's at now?
On the flower side of establishing it, I think is the beginning is establishing your reputation. Because if you're new, people are like, I don't know about that. That was probably the hardest part. I think the learning curve for me, as far as the land, is we're heavy clay. And sometimes I feel like I've amended this bed 5,000 times. Is it ever going to get better? Even though we've did that and did that and did that. But I think, and it goes back to earlier where I said you have one first impression. You have to start with one first impression, and then 1 turns to 5, turns to 10, turns to 500. So I think for any business, that's going to be your biggest challenge in the beginning, is just making a name for yourself for offering quality product. I've been very lucky in employees that we have here. Every employee that I have, if I walked away for 6 months, they would treat this like it was their own business. And you're only as good as your employees. And so I think that's been a huge benefit, is when you're hiring, stretch what you can pay more, and you're going to reap the benefits, because our employees are outstanding. I mean, would do anything for us, anything at all. So that's I know that's not really a challenge, but that's just a piece of advice of what I've seen, is invest in your employees. And, you know, I don't have to tell them to do anything. I mean, they know if I wasn't here this morning, they know what needs to be done without me even telling them. But that's from, you know, working with me for years, knowing what my expectations are, and knowing I'm investing in them to teach them everything I know. I'm going to teach them. I want them to, you know every piece of knowledge that I have here that they have, and they love, you know, and I think that goes back to hiring people who like to be lifelong learners also.
That's a great point. Yeah, because if you, and then also investing that time in the training, in the communicating, and again, it's another dividend you reap by putting that investment in the early stages, you know, finding the lifelong learners and then investing in them with training. So that's a great idea.
And I think to add one more thing is, like, this year was one of our girls' second season, and it's like through the beginning of the second season, or she's a lady, I shouldn't say girl, she was like, I can do this in half the time. But she'd been with us one full season. You're never going to hit scale if you're training a new employee every season to do this. I mean, you just can't, because it takes double the time. I mean, she knew how, I mean, I could have not been here, any of us, and she knew exactly the process. Because when we interview people, we interview them when we're pulling everything up and ripping out the fields. And we say it's a working interview because there are going to be people who come and they see the Instagram and the beautiful pictures and they don't think it's ripping up the thing and throwing it in, going to the compost. I mean, it is hard work. I mean, that's the hardest thing we do is pulling out everything at the end of the season, pulling that irrigation, taking because we ground cloth everything because I want to cut down on the weeding. Some people don't do that, but ours is total ground cloth. So pulling all those tarps up, I mean, that is we do a working interview. And, that is kind of how, but you see people who will say, and I'll say, we're going to do this because and I said, it's not going to hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, you're going to say, I do not want to do this. This is that is not for me. But I don't want you to come and me hire you and you decide in 2 weeks it's not what you want to do because we've lost 2 weeks in the season. So over time, I've learned you need, don't be scared to, have a working interview, set your expectations, and pay more than what you think you can afford. Because if you pay them well, they're going to stay. If they love what they do, that goes back to the working interview. No one's going to want the job if they can't handle this many hours in the hot field.
I love that. I don't know that I've ever had someone say that before on an episode. And so do you tell them when they're coming out that they're going to be working and dress?
Oh yeah. I've had it when we have ex people come out and we know that's what we're going to do. We're going to be working. And we've had somebody leave after an hour and be like, this is not for me.
Better to find that out now.
It's great. I mean, I pay them, I'm going to pay them for their time, but I just want them to know this is not all Instagram. Like, it isn't just me with the Lizzie ants that's thrown over my shoulder. We are like laying over here sweating. So I think you want people to know that it's hard. It is hard work. Flower farming is very hard work. I mean, you make it look beautiful. And hopefully you make it look easy. But that's why I think so many people, that's what my husband says, they want to do it because you've made it look easy. But when you get down here and, we're spraying the fish emulsion and seaweed and it smells terrible and weeding and, all this kind of thing, I think it's a great idea if you can to have them come out and try and let them know it's kind of let them see if they really like it.
I love that so much. Well, I can't believe our hour's already up. It's flown by. But Natasha, thank you so much for being on the Flower Podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a great time. Like I said, I always listen. I always have these in. I'm in the field listening. So it's great. You got to do more. You need more for me to listen to.
Absolutely. We're working on it. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, thanks for having me.